we have tá cuig nóméid déag again the kaint. We have 15 minutes of talk before we eat. And just as Jess there was talking about this idea of communication, of connection, we're going to focus on this. But I might start with asking Jess, because we know now that she's a home tree ecologist. But would you first tell us a little bit about you? And then maybe we talk about connection and Síomha too.
Thank you. So I work as an ecologist, and I don't spend a lot of time on stages looking at people looking at me. My happy place is in nature. I love to spend time looking at plants and listening to birds, mostly. And yeah, I work at Home Tree. I came to Home Tree a year ago, and it's been a whirlwind, to say the least. I feel very lucky to work at a place that aligns with a lot of my own values. And yeah, I think that's...
Perfect. Yeah. Síomha?
Is Mrs. Síomha is as conde chlór me, ach tá coney armanish I Garsavin I Curie. My name is Síomha. I'm originally from Ennis, County Clare, and I now live in Cahersaveen in Kerry. I suppose primarily I'm a musician. I was one of the artists in residence on the Dinchanacus project, and if you were at the launch earlier, I described how life-changing the project has been for me. For the last 4 years, I've also volunteered as the fundraising coordinator for Ackley Palestine, which is a community gym in the West Bank in Bethlehem. And most recently, I've just taken on a new role, a new twist in my career. I'm working as the coordinator for the Cumas Counter Ivrahawk, which is Creative Places IVRA, which delivers socially engaged art projects in the Gaeltacht and around the place in Kerry.
Now, anybody who was at the Changing Landscapes conference yesterday, or anyone who has any sense of Home Tree, know about the breadth, the vision, the strength of their mission to have to spread this new idea of us connecting with the land, connecting with forestry as much as we can. And that is a practical way of planting trees, of regenerating land, but also connecting people through ideas. So I'd love to touch with Jess and Síomha on how do we do that? Because we're all aware, everyone in this room, we're already sort of open to these ideas. The importance of sustainable management, the importance of connecting to nature and allowing nature some freedom again. But we do realize that beyond these walls, there are people that we need to make more of an effort to communicate with and to. Síomha? Sorry, Jess, maybe.
Yeah. I think the direction that I come to that from is one of understanding the names of things and placing them in nature. I find it really helpful. Otherwise, I'm kind of looking at blobs, different coloured blobs, and not really connecting with it at all. But yeah, we seem to have these conversations that go around and around. Kind of like you said, we often talk to each other and we really enjoy our conversations and we feel really good. And speaking to people outside of rooms like this is actually where the impact can really be made. So I think something that's very valuable. It's not actually a big part of the work I do. I stay behind the scenes a lot of the time, but our ESG days, I did one recently, and someone...
Just say what ESG is.
Environmental Social Governance. So it was with a corporate company, and someone said, you know, what can I do to get involved in nature? And I said, do you know what? You can do many things. You can do things in your garden. You can do kind of small things in your area, but actually I will never be in the space that you occupy. I will never in my life, hopefully, go into this corporate meeting room and speak to the people you get to speak to. So your power is there and your skills are there. And I think that's quite an important message of reaching beyond rooms like these.
Thanks, Jess. So I suppose from my musical perspective, my messaging has always been about I made a record called Infinite Space, and the kind of major theme on that record was about our collective oneness, and it was kind of inspired by personal experience and a lot of psychedelic trips, and it had themes of like our ability to connect with each other and how important it is to change and to kind of go with that as opposed to fighting against it. And I suppose the infinite space aspect of it was about exploring that deep infinite space that is within us, that within all of us. It's a collective oneness that we have, and getting uncomfortable in that space and exploring it so that we can start to make more sense of the world around us. So it was a 3-year process that I undertook working in America, making the album. And when I came out of that, I kind of started to look externally again for the first time. And I just had changed so much, and I became really disillusioned with the music industry. The music industry absolutely sucks. You probably know that, but it really, really does. And it kind of sometimes makes me embarrassed to be a musician. And so I always had a socially engaged mind, but my practice had never kind of crossed over in that way. And so I started to think more about the socially engaged mind that I had and moving my practice into that activism. And I've gone on this. Tinshanakas was actually my first ever grown-up socially engaged art project. I'd never been in that world before, and I've gone on this roller coaster of learning, and I guess really unlearning is the key word there, of understanding. And I had 2 pivotal moments that I'd like to share with you. So the first one was, there's an amazing organization called Safe to Create, and they offer training for arts workers in Ireland. And so I signed up to do effective conflict management was the course. It was a 1-day course followed by a Zoom call afterwards. And it was the very first time I had seen the map of values. This guy Schwartz came up with the map of values, and there's 58 values on this map, and they're broken into 10 different categories. And at that meeting, at that one-to-one afterwards, through the facilitation, it was the first time I had ever realized this explosive realization that the way I was trying to live my life to align my values so deeply with how I was living was causing major conflict in my life and around me, personally and in my work. And so that was a really explosive thing to realize and understand. And the second thing that happened was I signed up to do a course called Creativity and Change in the Crawford College of Art and Design. It's a module and a master's. You don't have to do the full master's, and I highly recommend it. It's all about global citizenship and global justice education, and it's understanding that through the lens of creative engagement. And so one of the weekends last year, we were facilitated by these 2 wonderful guest facilitators, Kelvin and Raphael, who had both come through direct provision in Ireland and now work as facilitators and global justice educators. And so this was my second time seeing the map of values. And on the second day, Kelvin, who's a choreographer and a dancer, he very subtly facilitated us in how to decode your values. We didn't even know he was doing it. And so we started the day understanding, he asked us, write down all the values that you're aligned with. And so we're a room of 20 people who care, activists, and we were I think I had 13, somebody else had 16 values that we felt very connected to. By the end of the day, unbeknownst to us, Kelvin had us go through this process of decoding the values, and we ended up with one value, a personal value. And his message to us was that as facilitators, we need to be able to have one value and not hold on to anything else so tightly. He said, you can sit on a hill being perfect on your own, not communicating, not connecting with anyone. But in order to do this work and to do it successfully, you need to be able to have one value you feel aligned with, and you also need to be able to leave it at the door. And he shared with us that as somebody who'd come through direct provision in Ireland, and now as a facilitator, he needs to be able to sit down with somebody who has a deep belief that asylum seekers have caused the housing crisis, and he needs to say, I hear you. And he needs to be able to work through that and to achieve progress. And that's where I think the role of art comes in, and the role of the artist on the Tinshanakas was so important. And we're not scientists, we're not government agencies, and we're not the law. We're just artists, and it's all about deeply listening. And I think I heard another artist talking, we live in this call out and cancel culture that is so rampant at the moment. And this learning that I had, I was so caught up in my values, and I put my hands up and say, I definitely crossed lines in certain aspects in the last while where I was in that kind of calling people out for not having the same values and not doing the same thing that I would have done. And so the artist role is so important. And I heard an artist at a conference, a Create conference, reflect that she wanted to feel safe within the movement, that if she goes to work with people who were involved in the Dublin riots, she needs to know that she's not going to get cancelled by the movement, that she's going to feel safe, because that's what we need to do. We need to talk to people. We need to connect. And so it's not about calling people out. It's about calling people in. And I realized that the calling out that I was doing was centering the ego, and it was completely lacking empathy, and it was overlooking any complexities involved in any given situation. And I realized that it's not about being perfect. Solidarity is just about showing up, and it's not about calling people out. It's about every single act of solidarity strengthening the whole, and it's about us all just trying to do better. And there's an amazing singer, an American protest singer called Carsey Blanton. She was just touring in Ireland, and she has a wonderful song that goes, let's organize, not criticize. We got everybody call them in. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're working for the FBI.
In terms of the issues that unite so many of us in this room, the idea of land regeneration, of forestry expansion, of regrowing the nature that was in this country, there is that we can perceive of this great divide between the ecologists and then the farmers, traditional farmers and landowners. Is there work to be done in connecting those two, do you think, Jess?
Yeah, 100% there's work to be done. I think something that was touched on is the language that you use. So the language of ecology can be very scientific, making that more inclusive. And I think going into a space saying, am I ready to hear what nature is for this person? So it's not how do you engage with nature, but it's understanding how a life engages or exists in tandem with birds, soil, hedges, whatever it is. And I really enjoyed something you said there. Just on that, I think going into a space and being ready for a fight is just never, if going into a space and saying, okay, how can I win? It's never going to be a useful conversation. And we talked about it earlier, but winning serves no one, and it definitely doesn't serve the cause you're trying to better. And making someone feel shameful or angry is really, really unhelpful.
But in the future of both of you, we have 2.5 minutes. In the future, both of you both have a lot more of this edge work in front of you. Like Jess, Home Tree is going to go more and more into traditional communities, into urban communities, into all sorts, and find that trying to present a new idea, an old idea, but an idea people have forgotten, you're going to be doing it daily. Síomha, you with your music, with your community work in Iveragh, with your social activism in Palestine, is just a continuous learning, or are there techniques that one can?
Yeah, I would say listen. And listen to what someone wants to actually tell you instead of trying to push your agenda. Obviously, at Home Tree, we have an idea of maybe how the landscape should look. And I'm really happy that we have that idea. It's important to have a vision. However, meeting someone where they're at and bringing someone into something is going to be way more, it's going to last for so much longer. It's going to have a ripple effect so much further.
I think somebody yesterday said at the conference it kind of goes further than meeting people where they're at, but meeting people where they are. Mm. So going in, if Din Shanachas was amazing for us to be able to actually go into Mike Shea's farm and sit down with him over the last year and, learn about your farm and meet people in the community centre and meet people where they are, I think is very important as well.
We have 1 minute left. Mike of Manchán do you have anything to say about, because there's a load of people in this room who like this idea of, bringing these big ideas around the world. For a farmer in Iveragh, do you have a message? Do you find there is a divide? Do you think is connection important?
Well, definitely it is. Tasha talked to her, right? Good. right the tradition that the traditions will go around, and that we don't lose the run of ourselves. I think we lashed the run of ourselves down over the years. We got too modern, and maybe when power cuts came there lately and everything, people had not been able to see after themselves. They had gone to electric in houses, and they weren't able to cook for themselves because they had no gas, so they had no fire and no chimney. That I think we want to go back. Yeah. Am I right?
You are. Yeah. And again, we now have 10 seconds, but what Jess was saying very keen earlier was that, Home Tree is not about a panel on stage telling other people. So just maybe when you're eating to think first in your personal lives, but maybe you judging Home Tree, you see, do you think Home Tree does manage to connect, or do we preach? Like almost at every table, there's a Home Tree representative. It'd be really interesting in your lives. Do you connect or do you preach, or does Home Tree connect? Do we need to do more of the connection, less of the preaching, or how is that balance? But while we enjoy our dinner and the rest of the evening, le Jess agus Síomha is